From the Broadcast Center at BCIT's Burnaby Campus, this is All Talk Radio. You're listening to 1680 The Crow.
Good afternoon. I'm Maham Hashmi with your news updates for 12 o'clock. In Vancouver, the accused killer of Constable Shaylin Yang will show up for a court appearance. Jong Wong Ham, who is accused of first-degree murder in the stabbing death of BC RCMP Constable Shaylin Yang, will appear before a judge. It has been almost a month since the death of the RCMP officer Shaylin Yang. Vancouver police have recently released images of a man who pulled a knife on a downtown hotel security guard last month. The incident happened on October 27th at night after security for Hotel Vancouver asked the suspect, who was loitering in the breezeway of the hotel, to leave the area. The suspect pulled a knife from his jacket and approached the security guard. Anyone with information is asked to call the police. Vancouver Council is set to vote today on their funding for police and nurses. The City Council is set to vote on a motion that would send an additional $4.5 million in city funds to the Vancouver Police Department and another $1.5 million to Vancouver Coastal Health to begin the process of hiring 100 new police officers and 100 new mental health nurses. The remains of a woman murdered in 1990 found in Prince George last month have been identified. The police identified the woman as Donna Charlie today. RCMP say that Charlie was the victim of a homicide in 1990, but only partial remains of the woman were found at the time. The remains were found on Kona Hill, a popular forest-ringed park above City Hall. The shortage of children's medication has now spread to adult medications. Eye drops, allergy medicine, and cough syrup are just a few that are running out or have completely gone out of stock at local drugstores. Supply shortages are hitting Canadians across the country at the worst time possible amidst the multidemic. British Columbians are being cautioned to take safety measures by the provincial health officer amid the expected autumn triple threat from respiratory illnesses. Provincial Health Officer Dr. Bonnie Henry stated that British Columbians should mask up if they have any respiratory illness symptoms and can't avoid close contact with others indoors. But the pressure for masks is stronger in Alberta. Alberta's second-largest school district is asking the provincial government for clarity on whether it can require masks when a school has a respiratory illness outbreak. Edmonton Public Schools held a special board meeting to discuss a wave of viral illnesses that is sending thousands of students home sick. The chairwoman of the school board, Tricia Estabrooks, says she's concerned that Alberta Premier Danielle Smith is suggesting masks won't be mandated in school.
That seems short-sighted to me. If we've learned anything in this pandemic, it's the need to be nimble and flexible and respond to the situation. You know, the current situation in Edmonton Public Schools, and I know in other large metro divisions as well, this is unprecedented.
Esther Brooks says the situation is critical and the school board is doing what it can to communicate that to the decision makers. She says those decision makers need to be health officials, not politicians. The BC Liberal Party has voted 80% in favor of changing the party name to BC United. Party leader Kevin Falcon says the new name demonstrates that their party is welcoming everyone.
To me, it's about individuals that are united by common principles and values, that we believe a private sector-driven economy is the best way to generate revenues for government so that we can fund first-class public health, education, and post-secondary services. And the key thing about it is I want this party to be a Big Tent party.
BC United has been registered with Elections BC, and the party will keep registration of the BC Liberal name and all associated domains. The new name still needs to be confirmed by members at a convention, and then it will be up to Falcon to decide when the change is implemented. Emergency Management BC will conduct a test of the province's emergency alerting system today at 1:55 p.m. Pacific Time, so look out for an alert on your phones. This is part of the National Alert Ready system to improve public safety in the event of an emergency. The province recently expanded the Alert Ready system to include alerts for wildfires, floods, and extreme heat emergencies, in addition to tsunamis, civil emergencies, and amber alerts. During the test, an alert will be broadcasted onto radios, TV stations, as well as to compatible wireless devices. A vehicle has struck 22 Los Angeles County Sheriff recruits on a training run and critically injured 5 more in Whittier, California. Firefighters and ambulances responded accordingly to the event.
We've got 5 immediate or critical transports. We have 4 moderate, and we have 14 minors. That includes the driver who had minor injuries that was also transported.
County Fire Captain Sheila Kellier says that there's no information on how the driver lost control. The G20 summit came to an end today in Bali, Indonesia, where Canada's Prime Minister addressed the Russian missile that landed in Poland from yesterday. A NATO member also stated that the missile blast in Poland was probably not an attack by Russia. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is urging the world to remain calm and collect the facts surrounding the reported missile strike that killed 2 people in Poland near the Ukrainian border yesterday morning.
And it's also bad for all of us, for all G20 countries, and indeed for the whole world. It's disrupting supply chains, it's creating global inflation and food and energy crises, and making life more expensive for people everywhere. This instability has repercussions for everyone.
Trudeau joined other G7 leaders and members of the NATO military alliance this morning discussing how to respond to the incident in Poland. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau faced complaints from Chinese President Xi Jinping about media reporting on their communications at the G20 summit. Trudeau stated that Canada believes in free and open dialogue in Ottawa. Industry Minister François-Philippe Champagne had this reaction.
Canadians can and must be reassured that yes, foreign interference is an issue in a lot of different ways, as we've seen all around the world, but the integrity of Canada's elections have not been compromised.
Trudeau says he won't shy away from being open with Canadians, even as we discuss important and sometimes delicate subjects. U.S. Defense Secretary states that the United States plans to keep up with its supply of weapons and assistance to Ukraine through the winter. Lloyd Austin spoke ahead of the 7th Ukraine Contact Group meeting today, where NATO and partner nations meet to coordinate security assistance for Kyiv. Austin says the aid will help the Ukrainian capital upkeep the pressure on Russia after the Kremlin withdrew its forces from Kherson.
Our NASAMS air defense systems are now operational, and they have had a 100% success rate in interrupting Russian missiles as the Kremlin continues its ruthless bombardment of Ukraine, including yesterday's attacks.
The U.S. has provided $18.6 billion in weapons and equipment to Ukraine. The 2023 Grammy nominees have been announced, with Beyoncé, Kendrick Lamar, and Adele sitting as the top nominees. Beyoncé has tied with her husband Jay-Z for most nominated act ever. The Crazy in Love singer has won 28 Grammys to date. Some Canadian artists nominated include Michael Bublé and Bryan Adams. With the World Cup just around the corner, provinces are pushing for earlier booze sales at bars and restaurants. British Columbia is one that has gotten the motion approved. Hoping to follow in their footsteps is Toronto. Toronto Mayor John Tory is backing a plan to allow local restaurants and bars to serve alcohol earlier than usual during the FIFA World Cup. The mayor says that he will ask city councillors next week to approve a plan permitting alcohol sales to start at 8 a.m., an hour ahead of the provincial standard, for the duration of the international soccer tournament. Tory is pitching the move as a way to help the pandemic-stricken restaurant industry, giving them an additional opportunity to benefit from World Cup celebrations across Toronto. The last time that Canada qualified for the World Cup was back in 1986. All-star outfielder Teoscar Hernandez has been traded to the Seattle Mariners from the Toronto Blue Jays. Hernandez has been one of the longest-tenured Blue Jays since the team received him in a trade for Francisco Liriano in 2017. With the Jays, he became an All-Star and a Silver Slugger. Teoscar would have been in his last year of team control next year. The team may have felt it would be hard to sign him and keep our other young players. Kyle Lowry returns to Toronto tonight with the Miami Heat to face his ex-team. Lowry played 9 seasons with the Toronto Raptors and helped lead the team to their NBA championship in 2019. He was traded to the Heat last year. The Raptors are looking to extend their home winning streak to 4 games. Currently, it is 8 degrees here in Burnaby with some sun out that should stick around for the next couple of days, so enjoy it before the rain returns next week. It will be partly cloudy tonight as temperatures drop to 2 degrees. Those are your 9 o'clock news updates. I'm Maham Hashmi for 1680 The Crow.
Stay tuned for more on BCIT's 1680 The Crow.
It's extremely important for people to stay healthy and to stay active as much as possible.
Everything is changing to digital. Everything is online. People aren't just waiting for the 6 o'clock news anymore. People want their news right now. They want to be able to go onto their smartphone, onto the internet, and see the news that they want to see.
Vancouver is growing at, a really rapid rate, the Lower Mainland even, and with the tools that we're given here, we're able to cover all of that.
Welcome to BCIT Magazine. I'm Radhika Sikakane.
In the program, they really leave it up to you. I mean, the help is there when you need it, figuring out how to use the programs like Premiere, Audition, and figuring out how to use the cameras. But it's up to you to sort of experiment and figure out what you can do when you go out in the field.
They brought candles and flowers to remember the student who lost her life yesterday.
Theresa May says the international community condemns Moscow.
They really make sure that you know the basics and you are able to put out a quality product. I'm Brady Tretanero.
And I'm Radhika Siggy-Kane. Thank you for tuning in to BCIT Magazine.
Good afternoon. My name is Jacob New, and you're listening to Companion Call on 1680 The Crow. Today, we are talking about women in sports media. The world of sports media can be a thoughtful, incredible space for interesting stories and passionate discussion. Simultaneously, there remain barriers and discrimination for women in the industry, whether they are working through a corporate ladder or making their own path in the realm of online content. I'm honored to have with me here today two guests. First, Georgia Twiss, one of the co-hosts of the popular Vancouver hockey podcast, The Broadscast, and Kaya May, a co-host of a local hockey sports post-game show, Game Over Vancouver. Thank you both so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having us. Thank you.
I'll start with the first question for both of you. What does it mean to you to be a woman that works in sports media?
I think for me, growing up, if I think about listening to sports radio, which I do often with my father, there weren't women on ever. Maybe they'd be the kind of in between they'd read the highlights, or I can't remember what they're called, but those things where they'd read the scores or something, but there weren't really women on the radio. And so I think for me, just simply being there to represent a voice that when I was growing up wasn't there is something that's really important to me, no matter
how the youth get picked out of the ring.
For a lot of different groups, but specifically for me, for women.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, kind of similar to that. Like, I grew up and there was no women unless it was like in between intermissions and stuff like that, where they'd have, oh, this is what's going on in like the other games in the league. They weren't like immediately on there. They weren't doing color commentary. They weren't doing pretty much anything on radio or anything else. So it's definitely been an interesting step forward, and as someone who's pretty new to this, it's definitely it's kind of like a welcoming thing, but it's also just like wow, there's still a lot more that should be done probably.
Yeah. On that note, you say, there's a lot more to be done. I think all of us have encountered people that may make assumptions that, things are better, but it's so much more important to specify that improvement isn't just an endpoint. When it comes to your experiences, what have you heard or read by others that proves there's such a long way for women to be treated equally in this industry?
Personally, it's any time that there's a female color commentator doing a game. On Twitter, I will see a lot of people being angry about, something she said, whereas if a male commentator said it, it would just be like, oh, okay, whatever. Like, it gets swept under the rug, whereas it holds up this woman's entire reputation. I kind of, personally related to that, because, anytime I try and talk about hockey or sports or anything with specifically, men my own age, if I'm talking in class, I'll kind of get brushed away because it's just like, oh, you probably don't know anything about it. But I'm just like, yeah, well, funny thing about that, I work in sports media a little bit, so yeah.
Yeah, I definitely think, I think one of the biggest problems, something that we often harp on about on our podcast, is that sports is still viewed through a male gaze, and it's still seen as this inherently masculine space. So any women who entered are transgressing. I think what Kaya said about the color commentators, or even someone like Leah Hextall, who calls the games, the amount of vitriol that they get spewed at them is horrific. And I think that there's still a complication there in having the conversation of, okay, you can critique someone, and that's fine, and that's totally legitimate to do. But when you cross the line into really horrific, misogynistic, sexist, just disgusting stuff, and there was an Athletic piece that was written recently where she went into it, and that's where you're like, okay, so women are there, but it's not tangible for them to be there long term because it's not sustainable. Like, logging on every day and having people like sexually harass you or give you threats, like death threats, for just simply existing and watching a sport that you love, you're not gonna last. It's really hard for your mental health and your physical health. So I think like those are the parts that I think people still don't understand quite yet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you talked about how there are those people in positions where they're in visible positions, and yet they'll be faced with a lot of, you know, unfair criticism or ridicule. Yet, you know, these equitable strategies are incredibly important. And, you know, could you state, you know, why they're so important then for people to actually see someone, you know, a woman, you know, do, whether they're doing color commentating or they're hosting a post-game show or hosting a female-centric hockey show?
I think it's just to know that you can do it, that there is a path there, and to have people also in the industry that can help you. Like someone like Carolyn Cameron supports our podcast, or people, like a variety of people that can reach out and also help you along the way and give you some lessons. People like Shireen Ahmed is like really important for doing that as well. So having people to pull you in. But I also think the other thing, sorry, this is going back to the last thing we were talking about, is the point that we need to push forward even further is that the women who are being represented right now are quite like feminine presenting. And I think one of the things that I'd like to see going forward in sports media is that the whole spectrum of femininity and how different women look, if they're fat, if they're queer, like whatever, that they're also getting represented in those spaces, which I think is what things like podcasts and kind of the ground up media is doing a lot better than the kind of corporate stuff. Mm-hmm. Sorry, I took us off on a different track there.
No, that's absolutely great. I know for some people that listening, they might know that both of our guests come from quite good education backgrounds, you being a teaching assistant and also with Kaya actually being a comm student. How has your education experience played a role in how you view sports and the opinions then that you have?
I've done a lot of research kind of based on how your identity is formed through different biases and stuff like that is what I've learned a lot about. And I kind of I grew up as a Canucks fan, so I grew up with the bias of they're the best. But then there's also other people grow up with other biases, of course, and one of the biases, like Georgia mentioned previously, it's viewed through a male lens. There's, around sports and sports media, it's very much still a boys' game. You can see it on TNT, I believe, was it? Just a few months ago, Paul Bissonnette saying that women only watch hockey because they find Tyler Seguin attractive, and why? I don't know. I just, it's still viewed through a male gaze, even through, the advertisements that are shown and everything. It's, all, F-150s and cars and stuff like that. We learn a lot about advertising and what's shown during prime time. So kind of how that is a dominant male view, so it kind of adds to this, women aren't specifically going to watch this. And it's kind of I don't know, you're trying to turn women away from this sport that, hey, they might actually like.
Yeah, there is also the criticism that comes from fans, when, in regards to that, the NHL had the hockey is not a soap opera comp comparison that both of you remember, but it's also good because then people that actually are fighting for equality and for that fair view that sport can be viewed in a female-centric way actually show. It's it's there, and it's because there's also the self-parody that hockey is a lot about drama that they didn't think it's all about the game or whatever. And as Georgia mentioned, there's so much vitriol that women face online when it comes to sports dedicated spaces. In your experience, I know both of you have I guaranteed experienced the misogyny of that. Over the last maybe year or year and a half, have you seen it, increase, decline? What do you think is the trend that you've seen so far in the misogyny that you face in those areas?
So when we first started the podcast, the first year was horrific. There was a specific moment where one of the hosts on the podcast was very upset about Elias Pettersson going on Spitting Chicklets and spoke out about it. And that really just kind of upkicked a lot of just horrible DMs, really bad kind of Twitter bot accounts and stuff. And that was really, really hard for us to go through. I left Twitter for like 6 months, and I posted like a whole diatribe of like the messages that I was receiving. And when I did that, I actually got a really good response from the local media that were like, this is really bad. Like, what are we doing? And I think that because they did that, when I did come back, and also like I blocked and muted a lot of these accounts, but it hasn't been as bad for me at least. But I also stopped talking as much about controversial topics. You feel yourself kind of self-edit so that you avoid getting that stuff. Because once you enter into the arguments over whether it's getting really into the nitty-gritty of the Hockey Canada situation or the Mitchell Miller situation that you're seeing now, that's when you get the really bad stuff. And so I find sometimes that I just go, I gotta step, I can't do this one. Mm-hmm. And that's really sad. But it's just kind of the life when you're kind of deciding as a woman if you want to speak out about anything. Like, this isn't just sports specific. This is just about being a woman online in general, I would say. But that's at least for me how I've experienced it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I kind of relate to that with like the whole self-editing and kind of monitoring what you say and stuff like that. I try not to get into like controversial topics, or if I do end up posting something and then somebody responds, negatively with like misogyny or homophobia or stuff like that, it's definitely hard for me to not like address it. But I don't know, if something really grinds my gears, makes me mad, I'll just shoot it off to my friends in DMs, because I'm like, I don't want to get attacked for believing what I believe. And I don't I feel like I shouldn't be attacked for having an opinion like many others do, but that's just the reality that I live in.
Mm-hmm. That forced tendency to self-edit what you put out online, it's not fair that women should be forced to go through that. How would you say is a way that you can fight back against that? It's difficult because there's so many mobs of, random people on Twitter that, take that take a position and, just be like, I can spew whatever I want. And Twitter as a platform, sides with them, ironically. I've gone through, I'll try to report, different things, whether it's misuse of language for slurs, and Twitter just gets back and they're just like, we don't consider it a violation of our terms. You mentioned that you don't, Georgia, you mentioned that you don't tweet as much.
Yeah.
On that. What would you like to see in terms of, being able then to speak out without having to face that vitriol? Like, would it be better terms of service, or at least better application of, saying this is wrong, this is hateful, this is inappropriate? Or do people just we need to, as a group, police ourselves better and saying, no, we don't take that for you to just say, XYZ about this person because they have an opinion about a random hockey player?
Yeah, I think the thing that really started to wear me down was I started to feel like I was being annoying talking about it by being like, hey, this person said they want to rape me. Can you guys do something about it? Because you're the one who's getting the messages, but you're the one who's having to put it up for other people to kind of step in. And I kind of started being like, I don't want to keep doing this. This isn't fun. And then I also feel like I'm going crazy being like, is it actually that bad? No, it is really that bad. It's really that bad. But when you get to that point, and I think the issue, the good and the bad about Twitter is that something like Twitter, just to speak about that platform in general, is you are able to broadcast to a large number of people. People are able to, access you in anonymous ways for their own safety. I definitely think that there's like reasons why people don't want to like have to verify everything about themselves, and I understand that. But the downside is that is what happens. And I do wish that Twitter was better with stuff. Like, there's still accounts that are using like photos of me that are in existence. Like, the account, they can't use the account anymore, but it still exists. Like, it's still there. And like, can you just take that down? Like, this doesn't seem like it's that complicated to do. But it's just this kind of, it's kind of spun out of control for a lot of people. I know, like, for me, I have all my like filters on for like, whose replies I see. So I don't even respond to people's replies anymore if I don't know them. And that's kind of, you kind of do have to build your own like defense and safety tactics, unfortunately, because they don't. And I actually don't know how they could at this point. I mean, not that Elon Musk is really going to step in right now, but yeah, I don't think that there is a way.
Mm-hmm. To conclude our show today, I would love to hear from both of you. What are the things that, people that enjoy sports, whether they're casual fans or hardcore fans, can do to support women that want to, exist and state just simple opinions in the industry? What would you like to see? If it was one thing that you could say to people that enjoy sports to support women in sports media, what would it be?
Stand up. Like, if you see vicious hate towards somebody and it's a public forum, or if you see somebody that's intentionally being hateful, or just in general, if you see a woman in sports media doing an awesome job, step up, promote it. I just see a lot of people saying horrific stuff online, and then no one is defending the person they're attacking, which is a fault, but a fault of our society for being afraid of conflict. But just stand up for people having basic human rights to have an opinion, or that it's not hurtful to others. I feel like I should emphasize that.
Yeah, I feel like there's a couple of things. I think like let's just take the broadcast, for example. Like, you don't have to like what we do. I'm not asking. I'm not saying you have to like what I do. And if you don't, then you're a misogynist. It's just, you have to accept that we have the right to have an opinion and do what we want and say the kind of things we do and watch sports in the certain way that we want to, which is through a subverted gaze. We're not doing it through the male gaze, but like, accept that that's just a different way of watching sports, and just don't police how women watch sports or interact with it. And then the second thing is, I'll say, like, men need to do a better job about calling out their friends, because like, a woman can say like, don't do that, but it's more powerful when it comes from another guy sometimes. And so just like, learn how to call in your friends. It doesn't have to be like super attacking, but it can just be something as simple as like, hey, not cool, like, don't do that, or whatever. And that's kind of what we need to have happen. Like, we all have to do it, because Kai and I can scream about this as much as we want, but until kind of everyone's pulling at the same rope, then it doesn't really go anywhere.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that should put a wrap on our conversation. I want to thank you, both of you, for coming on, Georgia and Kaya. I think we've had a great conversation about what people should recognize about the situation that women have in sports media and what simple ways they can do to help support them. To wrap up Companion Call, I'm your host, Jacob New. My producer in the producer's booth is Kiara Collins. And thank you for listening. Have a lovely day.
I dream a lot about the day that my family will arrive here in Victoria. And I just dream about showing them around, about this place that became my home. Looking back to that moment, I could not bear the fear in my mom's eyes. The sponsors are gonna be playing a big part in supporting my family after they arrive to Canada, to give them a sense of home and community.
So I went to a meeting with Tam and the sponsors at the Intercultural Society, and when I learned the amount of money that needed to be raised to bring his mom and his 2 sisters here, I was shocked. I was shocked, upset, thinking, why does it have to be so much?
We have formed a sponsorship group of 12 amazing individuals and supporters who reside here in Victoria on the island. And we work with ICA, who's a sponsorship agreement holder. They work in coordination with the Canadian government. And these organizations are giving number of seats every year to sponsor refugees. We're so lucky to get a seat finally after 5 years.
You know, his family is just at a risk. I have no idea how he manages each day with his mental health. It's actually amazing how he keeps it together.
He's such a hard worker. He's been working. I know that he's been not only doing that, but school on top of it and doing exams, and he blows my mind.
You know, we don't appreciate how good we have it here in Victoria. You know, we live in a very wealthy place, a very safe place, and now we know with Ukraine, like that was thought to be a safe place too, and now it's not safe. Syria was once thought to be a fairly stable, safe country to live in.
I just can't believe the circumstances they have to survive each day compared to even third world other countries that are out there. It's a whole different level of struggle in places like Syria.
We had met on Zoom last week, I think, with his 2 sisters and his mother, and they are really beautiful people, and they live in appalling conditions right now in Lebanon. They're illegal refugees. They're not allowed to work. They can barely put food on the table. They get by on what Tam can send them in terms of money.
There's been quite a few hard days where he just wants to chat with them, and until that moment happens, he has that fear in him of, like, are they still there? Are they still breathing? And that's a reality for him every hour, every day.
اوكي عادي. كيفكم صباحو؟ صباح الخير. هاي يا مامي. كيفك يا قلبي؟ اشتغلتم، كيفكم انتو؟ هاي ماما، كيفك؟ I left Syria, there was like an attack from all around the city, from different parties. And I wasn't sure if I would make it, you know, out of there alive or not. Around that time, like, it was really harsh. We had over like 40 missile attack on the city within like 2 weeks. So it was really bad.
Maybe you need a nap, just go nap. Like a snooze. Like a minute nap, snooze.
But also like you plan a lot on.
Yes, I will.
I think you should have. And the mix. My mom taught me how to make Syrian bread. I used to just watch her make it every Friday or Thursday for the weekend.
So, what are you worried about? What are you worried about right now?
I want to just make sure everything lines up tomorrow morning.
You know, like the GoFundMe page, that's an online thing, and people, you know, can read the story and be inspired that way. But it's to put just the work of making the food and making the scarves and doing the art and people coming together and giving in this more concrete and creative way.
Are you excited for today?
Yes, it's finally happening. Been lots of planning and lots of preparation and just getting stuff done and lots of amazing friends and people helping. So I'm actually very excited. Not nervous at all, I would say. I'm just looking forward to just share my story with everyone.
So we were just on our way to the souk. Like I had that feeling in my gut that don't go using that road. When I go, I felt strongly that we should use a different route to get there. And I was telling my mom, we're almost arguing in the street, no, I don't want to go there, let's take the other one. So I insisted. Not even a minute later, just hear a high pitch bombing. The buildings, the sky, the land felt like everything was shaking and everything was crumbling like a piece of paper. And people were screaming, blood everywhere. It was really scary. Didn't know if my sisters were home. We didn't know if they are still alive or not. And then we are running and back to our house to see what happened, if my sisters are okay or not. And the minutes felt like ages. It's lots of mix of emotions, happy. Feels like home actually, with all the people, the love, really good.
All three of my daughters will be here today at one point or another, either as artists or organizers, and we all live in the same city and I see them frequently, and I just can't imagine being separated from my family as Tam is from his.
Thanks a lot. Enjoy it.
Who's never experienced any of these conflicts. How fortunate I am, and if there's some way I can help, it's nice to do so.
I knew it that home was no longer home. Maybe you can introduce you to one of our amazing artists, Alla, from Ukraine.
I have 3 pieces that I donated. One called Lights of Hope. I have my whole entire family in Ukraine right now, and we lost 2 family members already, and so and being involved in Tam's fundraising, it takes, when you feel terrible, you need to focus on helping someone else, so your own pain will be less, right? So that's what I'm doing.
If I were in her situation and my son was across the world, I would be feeling, I think what she said, really concerned that he has people around him that would help him out. And that's what she said, when we saw it, we talked to her on the video, and she was just so happy to see all the good energy that was around him.
هذا الشعور، شعور إنه أم وبناتها وعندها ابن وحيد يعني هو حياتها. يعني هي اللحظة اللي إني أنا بدي أكون جنب ابني، هي عم بحلم فيها بشوفها بمنامي يعني.
Well, something I really like that my mom wrote me, and it just like always was always and like still stuck in my mind to this day. And she's the first page in this book is my mom. Yeah, and I always, for some reason, whatever my mom's write, I always write myself here, like in Arabic, of course, that I hope my mom lives forever and ever. My loved mom. Like always, like, and I sign it. It's like here. So that's my mom, and then here I did a heart with, yeah. So anyway, what she says in here, that life is like a train, and people in each station, they come to, like, you have new people coming and new people leaving. Some people are gonna be good, some of them might not be good, and she's saying, I really hope that your like life, or like your train, your life train is like filled with love and success.
Sold out. Yeah, sold out. Gone.
And you know, I always think, like, especially with food, is like, food is love. So I hope people go now, like, after they go home, they, you know, get to enjoy a meal made by us. And it was lots of learning, you know, like a good start, more to come.
I think we all did amazing teamwork. I booked off 2 of my shifts from the hospital so I can be here. But yeah, we all sacrificed time, but it's worth it. We're trying to do something beautiful and amazing, all in good hope and faith for Tam's mom and 2 sisters. And it'll be incredible once it all falls through and they're here safely.
They're awesome. Like, sort of like, they're more inspiring than I even expected. Like, they're so bright and hopeful and laughing and smiling and just really enchanting people. And it made me think, oh my goodness, what is, especially as sisters, what are they going to do when they get here? I think they're going to just really do awesome things and really contribute here. So I look forward to meeting them.
We just saw my sisters. They had minor injuries, but we're like crying, all of us, and we held each other and just like grabbed into them. Like it felt like we've lost them, and then we've got them back. That day I will never forget. Yeah, I will never forget that day.
We are
Being Gears.
That's cool. Fashion is the foundation of being gears, but I think it's also like one of the greatest factors that will even start discussion about being gears.
What makes this group so special is because like they have their own identity, you know what I mean? Everybody has their own personal styles. they have their own special talents and their own creative endeavors. And I don't know, we're like the Avengers, dog.
Yeah, we're.
Who's who?
I'm like.
Black Widow.
I'm like Thor because I'm the strongest, and. One of my biggest wishes is to work with a bunch of little gears, so we can change a big group of gears, and even affect the bigger gears out there.
All of us are so individually different that we fill gaps in all of us. So I feel like in that aspect, we're flawless. When we're having meetings, some of us are thinking so forward, and then you got other people like just grounding us a little bit. And even in just like the whole dynamic is flawless in that aspect. The lookbook's gonna be a showcase and also just an opportunity for us to get into the studio way more often. It's a very good starting ground for us to build our own portfolios and show people what we're capable of.
Yeah, something like this, I would say is pretty good for tote bag.
Yeah.
Like, it's not stretchy, it's sturdy. Fashion actually like brings out a character in you. Like when you're feeling good, when you're feeling fresh, you act totally different.
You don't have a Sharingan.
No Sharingan. It says Sharingan.
What do you mean Sharingan?
Like my full name is like Nicholas. I never tell people I never introduce myself as that.
The most fulfilling thing that I can imagine out of gears is seeing other people form their own little groups because of us and just doing things. Like imagine some kids in middle school, high school being inspired to do the same things, even if they don't go anywhere with it. But to start it and just even think about it is super fulfilling.
I think we should all just be looking for ways to make money and get grants, get this. If we can get a $2,000 scholarship.
It just all goes back to the point of like looking good and feeling good, man.
It's as simple as that.
It really is, man.
100%.
If we can be like the poster child for that, to try to promote, that as much as we can.
So how are we gonna draw it though?
Fashion and music, there's like that culture, the culture aspect of it, it all comes together through music, through art, through clothing. It just, it's very cohesive in that aspect and it's all a part of it.
We gotta draw one for the cuts to identical.
Okay, can we look at a calendar? Amazing.
I think video games for sure, because I used to be a big gamer. Now I have no time, but I used to be a big gamer, and I feel like the way that they build their character design is just through the roof. Like they make something that's out of this world, and I'm like, how can I take that and make it real life? I love Naruto. Just the silhouettes that they carry. It's like very, very, it's like drapey. Still kind of on that like Asian, like the kimono type, like squared off sleeves, squared off hems, and cropped and like that type of thing. That was one of my big inspirations before. So I used to always wear like hella crop stuff. Can I say that? Crop stuff and like crop pants and like oversized sweaters and stuff like that used to be my thing. And yeah, now it's just, I don't know. Now it's just anime all over, really.
And keep it straight so you see it's lined up. Keep it straight so it's lined up. Just from the positiveness, the light, the colors, everything. I think it's great, and that's what continued to inspire me.
We out here.
In the zoo cougar.
This like motto of like looking good and feeling good, I feel like that's something you can live by.
Like, I feel like people always limit themselves in the ideas that they want to do and they never really pursue it. But if we can show that and like, hey, it's getting done by a bunch of kids, that's community right there. You feel attachment to that. Anyone else can do this, but they're not. Who else is gonna do it with our positive attitudes? Who else is gonna do it with this welcoming? Who else? Who else but us? So I feel like this is always driving me because I'm just like, I wanna be that person that can connect.
From the Broadcast Center at BCIT's Burnaby Campus, this is All Talk Radio. You're listening to 1680 The Crow.
Good afternoon, I'm David Nava with your news update at 1 p.m.
Vancouver City Council proposed a new definition of anti-Semitism. Reporter Denis Shinoglu has more.
The International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, or the IHRA, definition of anti-Semitism was adopted by the Government of Canada in 2019 and now is potentially going to be taken in by Vancouver. Neil Naiman of Independent Jewish Voices in Vancouver warns that this definition may not be as it seems.
7 out of the 11 examples deal with Israel. There's no reason for there to be a definition which includes those examples. It's clearly done as an attempt by the Israeli government and its backers in certain Jewish communities around the world to protect Israel from criticism.
Naiman warns that the IHRA definition may not be created in good faith, and instead made to act as a shield for Israel. Denis Shinoglu, 1680, The Crow.
Vancouver City Council is set to vote today on their funding for police and nurses. The City Council is set to vote on a motion that will send an additional $4.5 million in city funds to the Vancouver Police Department and another $1.5 million to Vancouver Coastal Health. These resources will be used to begin the process of hiring 100 new police officers and 100 new mental health nurses. BC Liberal Party leader Kevin Falcon says he is thrilled that the party members have voted to change the party's name to BC United. He says the decision on when to implement the change is something he will have to consider carefully.
And we're going to have to choose the timing that makes the most sense for us. So, for example, just to give you a real life example, if David Eby calls a spring election, I'm not going to be stupid and change the name in February and be facing a May or June election, because that wouldn't make any sense. Because I don't control the electoral timeline, I have to be very careful about this.
Officially, they will retain their registration as BC Liberals to prevent other parties to adopt that name. At the G20 summit in Indonesia, microphones picked up Chinese President Xi Jinping accusing Prime Minister Justin Trudeau of harming diplomatic relations by sharing information about their meetings with the media. Trudeau replied that Canada believes in free and open dialogue. In Ottawa, Industry Minister François-Philippe Champagne had this reaction.
What I'm pleased about is that the Prime Minister standing up, as he always does for Canada, and standing up for our position and saying that, as I've seen in the press report, that we won't tolerate these type of things.
The Emergencies Act inquiry continues, and today the former head of the Canada Border Services, John Osowski, was called to testify. Osowski declared he was surprised to learn that agents were unable to stop people from coming to the country to join the Freedom Convoy. He specified that the law doesn't allow Canada Border Services to prevent people from entering the country to join a protest if they meet all the requirements.
As part of the enhanced vigilance exam process that we invoked before the Emergencies Act, we turned away people that intended to come and participate in a protest, or we suspected were going to participate in a protest, but it was only because they weren't vaccinated or didn't meet up with some other program legislation requirement.
Elon Musk is giving Twitter workers until tomorrow to decide whether they want to keep their jobs. The Associated Press reporter Julie Walker has more.
According to an email new owner Elon Musk sent to Twitter workers, they have until 5 p.m. Thursday to click yes on a link if they want to be part of the new Twitter, which he calls a software and servers company at its heart. Employees who don't reply by that time will receive 3 months severance pay, according to the email. Musk said Twitter will be much more engineering-driven, with employees who write great code comprising the majority. The billionaire, who completed the $44 billion takeover of the social media site last month, has already fired much of its full-time workforce by email. Julie Walker, New York.
It's currently 4 degrees in Burnaby, with the fog still around and with no signs from clearing out later this afternoon. The positive aspect is that temperature will remain the same, and it's not expected to drop lower than 3 degrees. That was your news update to 1 p.m. I'm David Nava, and you're listening to 1680 The Crow.
Stay tuned for more on BCIT's 1680 The Crow.